Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mocktail. Well, that's a lot of head, isn't it? I know brother and show producer Rich Brendel said if he wanted that much head, he'd pull his pants down. But that's another show for another time. Speaking about brother Rich Brendel, he is joining me on the show tonight. Producer Matthew Rooney is here, and brother Brad Riverdahl is also here this evening as we are celebrating on Machtails from the Cantina Live 60 years of the Grateful Dead. Hey, this is okay. Brad is showing muted. Okay, Brad is in the green room. We're going to bring him out soon. We are going to bring out brother Rich Brendel really soon. But before we do that, I need to tell you that tonight's topic is something that show producer Rich Brendel had highly recommended this year in the year 2025. And of course, as you see behind me, I am an aficionado and a savant from the era of music in which the Grateful Dead was formed in. And I said, yeah, brother Rich Brendel, you're a show producer. That is one of the things that you can do on this show as a producer. You can come up with content, and we would be more than happy to turn it in to a live show. So I want to thank all my Patreon supporters from the $2 tier all the way up to you guys, big dogs at the producer level. You guys are what keeps this show going, and you guys are what keeps all this hard work that all of us put in here on the show worth it, I should say. So thank you for your support. Thank you for tuning in. Speaking about producers, without further ado, we're just going to get right into this. I am going to bring brother Matthew Rooney on. Matthew, welcome to the show. As always, man, we missed you on the Halloween show. And I got to tell you, man, as you might or might not know, but I'll tell you again if you do know, that you're crafting with the Zoom field recorder and what you do behind the board, definitely get more than super appreciated when I end up doing those myself.
I'm like, yeah, it's always nice to have an extra hand. And yeah, I'm sad that I couldn't be here for the Halloween episode, but I was, of course, seeing Return of the Jedi in concert in Little Rock, so that was really enjoyable. I feel like that's a good reason to miss, I think.
It's a wonderful reason to miss. And you were with your mom. How was that experience for you?
It was good. It was really fun. And as you probably know, Return of the Jedi has a lot of like kind of fun percussion going on, like especially during the Ewok scenes and stuff. So they had several percussionists kind of in the back who were running around doing the music. And it's really impressive to watch those shows because, it's sort of like the first time that's being performed that way, where they're playing it, live with the film. And like when they were, creating those, scores and recording them for the films, they didn't actually sit there and do the whole thing in one sitting like that. And so it's pretty impressive that these musicians can do that. And I mean, it fits into the movie perfectly. Like sometimes I get lost looking at the screen and I forget that there's a live orchestra there. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny when I've seen, and I've gotten a chance to watch a handful of these, from the Muppet Christmas Carol to most recently Coco. The music to the film is such an amazing thing to experience, but I find myself bouncing back and forth. Right? I'm like, should I watch the musicians? Should I watch the movie? It's very hard to focus on both because the movie is obviously above the orchestra, but it's kind of fun to kind of get both perspectives, man. And it's really cool that they're doing these kind of things, especially more recently,
Yeah, and this time, because I saw Empire Strikes Back last year, this time they had before the show started, they had one of the musicians came out and did a presentation on like some of the film music, which I felt like I'd already know all that because I'm, a pretty deep fan, but he had some stuff that I didn't know that he kind of came out with, and like he had PowerPoint slides and stuff, and so he did sort of like a pregame show, which was really fun as well, and he was one of the violinists for the show too, so that was really neat.
Yeah, it's cool, right? Because it's more interactive. It's more interactive, getting involved with the presentations and that sort of thing. That's a very classical-oriented thing. They want to make sure that the fans understand the music, and they try to do their best to explain it, because not everybody has that musical ear. But for those of you that are tuning in tonight, you're here for the music, as we are going to deep dive into 60 years of the Grateful Dead. But before we do that, I want to again, Matthew, thank you again for everything that you do. And you had the idea to talk about, as we are winding down 2025, and obviously we're not doing any more celebrity interviews this year, but we do have, of course, ICC next year and Rebel Scum Con next year. Tickets are on sale for those now, guys. So if you're thinking about it, remember, you can always cancel your hotel reservations pretty close up until the day it starts. So I recommend, if you can swing it, go to both of those. I would say, if you can only do one this year. Do the next one next year. Matthew, you've also updated the website, Machtails.com. And God, man, I looked at that after you updated it, and I got to say, I'm humble but proud. Thank you for your hard work on that. And why I say I'm humbled but proud is because we've had the experience to really capture some great audio. And just to kind of recap the top 3 from this year, I'm going to start with number 3 for me, Roger Christian. And keeping it music heavy, I would say this was his second time on the show. And the first time we had him on, we were at ICC. Second time, we were Rebel Scum back in August. And I did a music deep dive with Roger. And he absolutely blew my mind, to being the neighbor of Jimi Hendrix, to his kids going to school with the guitar player of Yes's kids, the Howe family. I was just, and my jaw kept dropping every time he mentioned a music story. And of course, the icing on the cake for me is that I asked him, I said, why is this not in the book? He said, the publisher wanted to keep it mostly Star Wars. And I was like, well, we got the supplement, the music supplement here.
Yeah.
On Machtails. That's got to be my number 3 for sure. He was great the first time. Obviously, we got cut short the first time. And you know what, Matthew, remind me, did we interview him for the first time this year? Or was that last year?
No, it was in May. So he's been on twice this year. We interviewed him twice this year.
Been on twice this year, yeah. So, and again, when I interviewed him the first time, he talked a lot about Tunisia and that sort of thing, and the work that he did with David West Reynolds, who I've asked to be on this show a handful of times, but for some reason, he's one of the few that declines. Moving on to number 2, this was a number 1 for a long time. Kyle Solar, he obviously in Andor, he was just so humble and very, not to sound like the young kids these days, but he had this vibe about him that was just, he was rolling and smoking the same shit that we were. And you could tell that just by the honesty and the passion that he had behind his answers. And again, did not expect to get him. He was definitely one of the A-listers at Rebel Scum Con. Somebody that was in front of us had taken advantage of his time, and we did not. And I bought an autograph, and his autograph was very cheap considering who he is. And it was just one of those things where I'm like, wow, this is really good. But I got to give a shout out to Spencer Jawitz from the Virtual Cantina Network. He had invited me to interview and host this wonderful event with Deanna Lee Inosanto. And she was just fucking so much fun. So much fun. She was a perfect guest on the show in this live environment that we had in Elk Grove Village, the suburbs. And, you know, the fact that Spencer asked me to host this when he could have asked a handful of other people, I was flattered. And she kept ranting and raving about me that night. And then I hear from Spencer at Rhode Island Comic Con like 2 months later where she was. And he said, she's still talking about you.
Nice.
So, it was one of those things where it was high profile for me, unexpected, and just honored and privileged to have such a wonderful guest go with the flow. And when we do these interviews at the conventions, we don't get a chance to deep dive as much as we did, say, with Brandon Wayne, right? And get deep and heavy. We don't approach all our interviews that way, but this time I did, because it was a live 1 hour event. And I tell you, man, I think that's the meat and potatoes of this show, going old school, crazy, off the wall questions. And she just took them all, answered them all, and was just a lot of fun. So she's my top one for 2025. But they were all great. They were all great from having Michael Brown on the show again, all the way up to her. Matthew, how about you? What are your top three?
All right, so I picked some that are maybe a little more low key, and also I picked a couple that actually haven't been, put online yet. For those who don't know, we had a lot of interviews from Rebel ScumCon, and there's still. I went through my photos today that I took of each one, and there's still 13 interviews. Three of those are mine that I did, and then there's 10 that you had been the lead interviewer on to go. And so hopefully
we got 13 more to go.
If you include the 3 that I did, there's 13. So there's 10 more that you did, and then my 3 as well. So
it's quite a bit. It's quite a bit.
Yeah. So 3 of my favorites were Christopher Sean, who he did the lead voice for the Resistance animated series. And I really enjoyed this conversation because Resistance took a lot of flack, and it was really cool to hear him talk about that, because you did ask him about that and what his response to that was. And also, I had no idea that he was like really an accomplished, like he's been on soap operas and things like that. And he's a really good looking guy who's really fit as well. And so it was cool to see. He had a bunch of other photos aside from Star Wars stuff from some of these other projects he was in. And then he was super friendly, and he had a lot to say about, how people responded to the show, which I thought was really interesting. So I'm looking forward to people being able to hear that. I really loved talking to Lewis McLeod. He did the voice of Sebulba. We talked to him at ICC Con. I think a big reason why I enjoyed him so much was because he's from the same part of Scotland that my dad is from. He has the same accent. It's this Glaswegian accent. So I really enjoyed what he had to say. He's really funny, and he does lots of, obviously voices and things like that, but he was also just so friendly. As you can see here, I asked to take a photo of him, for the website, and he said, let's take a selfie together. And so he took 2 or 3 for me that were really fun.
He was fantastic. And again, I thought we might have interviewed him last year, but I tell you, everything's starting to blend together. He was great because he was great for so many reasons. And this one has been released on Patreon and Patreon Machtails, which you can join for free. Make sure to use that code that's out there. Maybe go to the show before this. The link is there. But he gave me a free autograph for my brother because I kept telling him about how my brother, when he was, 4 years old, his Sebulba was his favorite. He goes, what's your brother's name? Yeah, just a really down-to-earth, friendly guy. Yeah, both of those interviews that you mentioned are very, very great.
And then for me personally, I got to interview, which hasn't been put online yet, but I got to interview Michelle Ong, who did the voice for Omega on the Bad Batch. And so this was one that you let me do, and we did it at the very last minute. I remember on the last day, we were, going to go give our recorder over to the Skywalking, through Neverland people. And so, like we had already promised our recorder to them for that event at like 2 or 3 o'clock, and then you were flying out afterward. So I was kind of hanging around her table like all morning because her representative said that I could interview her, but just not to come up when she was busy. And she kept like having breaks, and the people will come up. And so I barely got in there, like within, I think, 30 minutes before we went to go do the Skywalking show with them. And so it was really nice to talk to her. She's like a day older than me, so I brought that up, which was fun. And I talked to her about not only her, voice acting that she did for this show, but also some of her other things she's doing, like directing, and she's interested in writing for television and for film. And so that was really fun. And so I'm sure people will enjoy that interview when it comes out later this year or early next year. So those are my three.
Dude, those are great three. And her and your number three, as you mentioned, they both had they're both very, very high profile in the industry. They had a lot of different photos from a lot of different projects that they had worked on, I should say. So, all right, man, I'm going to put you behind the board because we have some cool images here, and I know you probably don't have much to say about the topic of the evening, do you? When it comes to the Grateful Dead 60th anniversary?
No, I have zero. I have never. Nope, I have nothing. So that will be on you guys.
No, all right, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for sharing your top three, and I look forward to releasing those. At least by the end of January. So, hey, we'll catch you later, and thank you again for all your magic behind the board. Again, guys, join Patreon for free. But make sure you use the code because that code is going to give you access to the paid content. I forgot to mention that I am in my third room here. This would be, I don't know, the west wing, the east wing, the south wing of the Wampa Cave. This is the Fillmore room. And actually, the only Grateful Dead poster that I have is that one behind me. We are going to talk to good friends and brothers. Brad Riverdahl and show producer Rich Brindle is here. I do want to say that this year, 2025, is the 60th anniversary of the Grateful Dead. But I need to mention that the Grateful Dead had originated in San Francisco. San Francisco was it was lightning in the bottle. It was the right place at the right time. Holocaust survivor and concert promoter Bill Graham had moved from New York after he left Nazi Germany. He had left, or I should say, the region where it was under control. He split up with his family. He went to New York City, and then he ended up going to San Francisco. Now, if it wasn't for him and his ambition to do something, we would not have had the music scene that was shaped and became the San Francisco sound. Now, there are 4 other bands celebrating their 60th anniversary. My favorite band, Jefferson Airplane, obviously the Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company, that was her first band, and of course, Quicksilver Messenger Service. These are considered the Boar Fig. Hey, it's the celebration ale tonight. These are considered the big 4 of the San Francisco sound. But what makes the Grateful Dead so different? You know what? Without further ado, I'm going to bring on show producer Brother Rich Brindle and Rishi Mays, drummer and brother and good friend Brad Riverdahl. Guys, thank you for taking the time tonight. And Brother Rich Brindle, thank you for your recommendation on something that I have been looking forward to talking about. One of the things that I got to say is what makes this band different is that they kept doing what they always did. And all the other bands either broke up, Jefferson Airplane turned into Jefferson Starship, for example. So many bands just kind of fizzled out. The 60s got old, but the Grateful Dead kept going. And I think what makes them different, and one of the things that I love about them is they were the ones that carried the torch of the original San Francisco sound. And they were true to their roots, I should say. When all the other bands, kind of imploded by the time the 60s were over, or in the early 70s. That's my take on what makes them so different. But let me ask you guys this question: what was your introduction to the Grateful Dead, what is your first memory? And we're going to keep this kind of more of a personal show, as we always do, as opposed to doing copy and paste with information that is out there. Brother Rich, well, why don't you start with that? What was your introduction to this band?
Honestly, I didn't really get into them for years. I mean, I knew that by hanging around like you and Brad and Tyler and everybody, it's a band that all of them really loved, and Brian Klein and stuff. My first real exposure to it was at ICCC one night. We were having a wild party out on the patio that night, and Tyler was listening, put some Dead on, and like he was like started just grooving and just like doing a little dance to it and stuff, and I'm like, these guys are really good. I just the name of the band, Grateful Dead, I thought that they were harder than they are. And I'm like, these guys are actually really chill. And anybody that can get Tyler to move like that, it's got to get more into them. So I started diving into them more, and it kind of never came back. It's so
you got the bug, you got hooked, and you can thank your Star Wars friends for that.
yeah, totally. I would never have found the Dead if it wasn't for Star Wars friends.
Brad, how about you, man? What was your introduction to the band, and were you a fan of the band immediately right from that get-go, or were they kind of more like, you had the introduction and then years later they kind of clicked with you?
I was the exact opposite. I kind of grew up on punk and metal and hard rock. And despite their name and their imagery, like you guys, like you just said, Rich, they're the exact opposite. They're like their image and their name does not denote like the folk R&B, bluegrass, rock like mix that they are, jazz mix. But yeah, I mean, I remember my first introduction probably was when I was a little kid, seeing the Touch of Grey video with the marionettes and the puppets and stuff, and that song was so huge in the 80s. I mean, you couldn't ignore it. It was on TV. It was like their only song that was ever consistently on radio. But I did not like them. Like I said, I had a predisposition to being like, I don't like that hippie stuff. I was more into, like the Misfits and Black Flag and Megadeth and Kiss and all that stuff. And then I would say, interestingly enough, I want to say it was the early 90s or maybe like 93, 94. Jerry Garcia and David Grisman were on the David Letterman show.
Yes.
And they did a version of Friend of the Devil. I'm like, who are these guys? And I remember just sitting there being like, wow, this is a beautiful song. It's like really powerful arrangement. And I just sort of slowly let it seep in after that. I remember checking out Europe 72, hearing that on a few songs on the radio on XRT, and being like, maybe I shouldn't be afraid to be into these guys, because there's more. There's
more to them, yeah. There's more to
yeah, for sure. And the stigma of like, oh, I can't be into that. I mean, after your teenage years are over, I just sort of started to open myself up to different, genres and stuff. And yeah, top 5 for me now, easy.
Well, it's funny, Brad, you definitely set up a perfect segue. The first photo that I want to show you guys is from 1965 when the band was called the Warlocks. A lot of you guys know this. And I tried to do a little research. How Jerry Garcia was responsible for the name The Grateful Dead. Why they changed the name from the Warlocks to the Grateful Dead, I do not know. And it's funny looking at all these images from all these bands from their beginning roots, because they look so kind of clean cut. But Brad, you make a good point. My introduction to the Dead was 1987, Touch of Grey video. MTV back then was in everybody's living room, and every band that had a video, I mean, look, Metallica's an example of that too, right? Like Metallica was a band that was around since 1982. They put out their first video in 1988. Grateful Dead puts out their first official MTV video in 1987, Touch of Grey. which I believe that was off of their very last studio record, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe you guys can correct me.
Second to last.
Second to last. And the funny thing that I remember is that my brother Nathan, who could give two shits about the Grateful Dead today, he loved that fucking song. Loved that song, loved the video. And we were kind of I was kind of like poking fun at him a little bit. Now, he didn't have any recollection of the past of the Grateful Dead, but I did know that these guys have been around a long time just based on how they looked in the video. Yeah. These guys were not, rookies by any means. And it was not, and I remember when I was playing death metal, there was this one band that had this song, and I'll never forget this. And I was not supportive of this because I never hated on the hippie movement. I was always curious why people made fun of bands from this era. And you got to think, right, 1987 is only 20 years from the Summer of Love. That is not that long. I mean, we've already surpassed 20 years of Revenge of the Sith, for God's sake. So it's not that far removed, but there was this death metal band that I had seen on the local scene, and they had this song called The Grateful Trend. And they're like, this is for the Deadheads. And I never forgot that they were kind of slamming how trendy the fans were, but I never found the fans trendy. So I never understood it. And I was always like, why do people need to slam the past? Kind of wanted to know more about it. And then 1994 is when I took my deep dive in Woodstock and all things 60s from there. And I fell in love with this man. This man is Bill Graham, the concert promoter that I mentioned not too long ago. I read his book 2.5 times. Grateful Dead is all over this. Bill Graham had managed the Dead for a long time. Again, Bill Graham was responsible for the San Francisco sound. He was responsible. I'm going to go as far as saying he was responsible for the success of the Grateful Dead simply because of his management skills and putting these guys on the map in the beginning. Now, Deadheads might know him as maybe an asshole, a jerk, but you know what? When you're a Holocaust survivor, I don't know. I think you're going to be an asshole and a jerk to some degree. But the Grateful Dead, man, they performed at his memorial concert. Like I said, they're all over this book. And the Dead had closed down the Fillmore West. They had played at Monterey Pop Festival, Woodstock, Altamont even. They weren't the biggest and they weren't the best at that time, but again, they were something in a special time where they kept that torch. They kept that torch burning, and I think that speaks volumes about carrying that scene all the way until now, because I think a lot of that music would have been completely lost if the Grateful Dead had not carried on that torch and still continued to do the same thing that they did from day one, even though they evolved. Yeah, it's fair to say that they definitely evolved. They definitely were pioneers with the sound, the wall of sound. I know we have a photo of the wall of sound with all of the speakers. This is something that was important to them, something that Bill Graham was not necessarily capable of doing because he was not a sound guy. But you know what? I got a photo. We got a photo, Matthew. We got a photo of Bill Graham with the Grateful Dead. I think that's photo number 2. This is at the Fillmore Auditorium. Bill is in the middle there, and it's cool. If you go to the Fillmore today, this photo is hanging up in the Fillmore Auditorium, which is crazy. That venue is still there. That is quite magical place.
You said, Chris, like how they carried the torch. What's even more crazy about this band is essentially after their first album, they just sort of did some standards. They did a song, Golden Road, that the record label was like, oh, you guys need a hit. So they're like, okay, we'll record this one. It's catchy. Like after their first album, like they just did whatever they wanted. Like they got to the point where they're like, you know what, we're not doing albums anymore, which is insane. It's like we're
Yeah.
just playing shows, and we're just like, there's some of their best known songs aren't even on studio albums. They're just live versions that were put out into the ether. It's very, very punk rock, I would argue.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look at Anthem of the Sun. I mean that the music in that, the sound in it is not anything that you would hear on mainstream radio at all. I mean, who would listen to a song called New Potato Caboose?
Yeah.
Right?
They're just exploring at that point.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. They were eccentric even for their own time.
Yeah, they were, and I think that's why I don't. I think that's why I'm not a fan of the label, the Deadheads, because I feel like to label yourself like that, and they obviously didn't label it, but you know, I feel like it's kind of against the grain of what those guys were about and what they're doing, what they were doing. Let me ask you this. I know there's a huge difference between live and studio. There really, really is. As Brad, you're the drummer of Rishi Mays. We know that there's a big difference between live and why I will not go in the studio.
Yeah.
What is your favorite studio album from these guys?
Rich?
Do you have one? Rich, do you have a favorite studio album? Or are you...
Oh, yeah. Terrapin Station.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's my number one. It's just, you know, when I want to introduce somebody to a studio recording from the Dead that is fairly long, which is in spirit of the Dead, you know, I play him title track Terrapin Station, and that's one song I always play like in the bars on the touch tunes because I get most bang for my buck there. It's
you do.
like a 15-minute song, and the way they do it, it's almost like a practical joke. Like so many times you think, oh, the song's over now, and then they go right back into it, and they do that like 3 or 4 times.
Well, it's almost like a classical composition where it's a big middle finger too, because it's like, oh, like here's the entire side of the album is just this one long sprawling song that goes here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, it's like what DJ would be like, oh, we got to play something to fill some time. Let's play this. You know, they're not going to do that.
Brad, how about you? What is your favorite studio record?
I think their best studio records are probably Working Man's Dead and American Beauty, because those are all the songs that, you know, you hear the hits, so to speak. The one that I go back to the most nowadays, like the last 10 years, is Wake of the Flood, which is, you know, it's got Mississippi Half Step and Stella Blue and the Weather Report Suite, which is kind of like
that's good on Weather Report's amazing.
That's like the precursor to Terrapin Station. It's like a, you know, 3 or 4 part song, but that's the one that I go to, and it's very it's varied as well. There's a lot of different styles on that, so I don't know, it doesn't get old to me.
So it's the variety from that album that you really did.
Yeah, and it's weird. That's like when they kind of change too, which I prefer a lot of their earlier stuff, but that's like the period where they had their own label, if I remember correctly, on that one. They put it out on their own record label and kind of had complete control over it. Didn't really know what they were doing, but they started to get a little more adventurous at that point, you know?
Yeah, I would have to say my favorite record was probably my favorite record is probably Working Man's Dead. I want to say that was if that was not Pigpen's last album, it was one of them. You guys can correct me on this, but I feel like that was really the record that had put them on the map. My favorite Dead song comes from that record, which is New Speedway Boogie. I gotta say, one of my favorite Grateful Dead members, or one of my favorite Grateful Dead eras, was definitely the early days. Pigpen, who had passed away prematurely, had brought a lot of grit to the band that they did not have later on. So Working Man's Dead, definitely my favorite record, followed by American Beauty, I would say. And I don't want to ignore that first one. The first one obviously has my other top 3 favorite song, Morning Dew, which is definitely a cover that they did. Rod Stewart, when he was with the Jeff Beck Band, did an amazing cover of that song as well. But the first record really captures that San Francisco sound era, you know?
Totally.
Definitely a time capsule of an album. What about for you guys? What would you say your favorite song? You guys have a favorite song? Rich? You know what? Give me one of your top 3.
Like so much on like what mood I'm in.
Okay, so it depends on what mood you're in. That would shift to your favorite song.
If I feel like dancing, like Shakedown Street, or maybe the cover that they do of Turn On Your Love Light, those are both really good. If I'm kind of in a melancholy mood, Broke Down Palace, Ripple. It's kind of a cliche one, but I mean that's a good like go-to if I just want if I don't want to listen to a song that's like 15 minutes long. So many great ones.
I would have to say Ripple is maybe my number 2.
Yeah.
If Brad, I want you to tell me your top 2, top 3 songs. I got a cool Ripple story that kind of fits the holiday.
With Ripple, when I went out to Haight-Ashbury in September, that was like the song that I played while standing at the house, just because I didn't want to stand at the house for like 10-15 minutes.
Well, you get the cops called on you there. Like, this guy's scoping the place out to steal something.
And again, another one from American Beauty. It's funny. My top 3 favorite songs, they all come from. Yeah.
Wasn't American Beauty? Didn't they have like? Was it Graham Nash that kind of they called up to kind of help get the vocals, like get the harmonies, like.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
I had read, and I could be wrong, but I believe that they worked with him. He was like, you guys can take this to the next level if you start harmonizing, which is obviously a huge, Nash thing. Crosby, Stills, Nash.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you start hearing that around Working Man's Dead, where it's like they stepped it up a level, where it was like, oh wow, there's like cool 3-part harmony. It's some great singers in the band too. I mean, like, it's crazy.
Well, I think you even hear that specifically starting, like you said, Rich, on American Beauty. The harmonies have really kicked in. It's very important to note and very important to point out, and I kind of learned this years and years and years ago when I was at a museum out in Seattle. You can't create scenes. You can't fabricate scenes. They happen organically. And that is exactly what was happening in San Francisco starting in 1965. And, the last thing that kind of really happened like that was the Seattle music scene. And there was definitely a very, very strong parallel between what was happening in Seattle in the early 90s and what was happening in San Francisco in the mid to late 60s. There's a photo behind here that we're sitting on. Matthew Rooney, bring this one up. This is really one of my favorite photos here. This is Pigpen and Garcia with Yorma and Jack from the Airplane. This is something that you don't see as much today, right? Because I think you only see this when you're part of an organic scene. And as much as I love the Airplane, I get aggravated that everybody's talking about the Dead 60th. But I got to tell you, the Dead, like I said, the Dead kept it going, right? The Dead kept it going. Airplane broke up a long, long time ago. The Airplane didn't even play the closing of the Fillmore West because they were already fried out and burnt out and sizzled out and weren't even really operating as a band. And Garcia, I want to bring this to people's attention that don't know. Garcia was credited as the spiritual advisor on the Airplane's biggest record. And this record, Surrealistic Pillow, was the record that had put the San Francisco sound on the map. And Garcia was also a big part of arrangements and, composing music on the album, even though he wasn't credited as, but he's said this in
Didn't
interviews.
he play on an album too?
Well, he played on Surrealistic Pillow.
Okay, I thought it was okay. Yeah,
And
I thought he had something to do with volunteers too, but maybe I could be totally wrong.
You know what? He might have. I do know, speaking about Graham Nash, he had played slide guitar on Teach Your Children Well on the first CSN. That's the second CSN album. I got to tell you, this Garcia is probably my favorite Dead member. Pigpen lurking in the back right behind Jake Cassidy there is a close second. Simply because Garcia, just loved playing music with everybody. I think his spirit is something that says a lot about not necessarily the scene as a whole, but the band as well. And it drives me crazy that people have this division, like they do in Star Wars sequels, with Garcia, who had passed away in 95, to John Mayer playing. Because, look, John Mayer didn't write those fucking parts. He might play them better now, but he's also in a completely different state of mind than Garcia was. I feel like Jerry, he might be overrated and over-imaged to some, but he's also very underrated to a lot of people. Definitely a music icon that will never be forgot, but rightfully so should not be forgotten. You guys have a favorite member? Rich, you got a favorite Grateful Dead member?
Hands down, Jerry. I mean, the dude was he played because he loved music. And he didn't just love guitar and singing. He loved songwriting. I mean, him and Hunter were brilliant together, and when he wanted to learn a different instrument, he picked it up and taught himself, and learned how to play it, like the banjo and stuff. And, he stuck to his roots. He started as a bluegrass dude, I think. And the other thing I love about him is he didn't just focus on one label. Like, he wasn't just like, I'm a member of the Grateful Dead, I'm not going to play with anybody else. He played with whoever he wanted to. He went and did his own solo stuff. He went and did stuff with, who's the bluegrass guy that he did stuff with a lot?
Merle Saunders and David Grisman.
Yeah, David Grisman. That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, and he was, he started his bluegrass band, Old and in the Way, too.
Yeah, and there were times when there's a story about how just in like a San Francisco bar, the Dead showed up one night and they just started doing an impromptu concert that wasn't even really recorded because there were no tapers there, and it was because Jerry loved to play.
Right.
He didn't care about the money.
Yeah. No, he probably
ice cream. He said that to one of his loves of his life is, let's just live off the ice cream, at times. But
yeah, I think it's one of those things where God, it's like, with Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, so many others, Jim Morrison, the big ones for sure. Yeah. But there's a lot of people that had passed away that never had that same star power. But it was kind of weird that Jerry had passed away when he did, because, a lot of people might say that was not their favorite era of the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, man, when Jerry passed away, I had this crazy San Francisco fantasy that the Grateful Dead was going to be going on with everybody from that scene. They were just going to bring on special musical guests. And that never happened. But the Further Festival had happened the year later, and it was kind of the same concept. It was kind of like the Lollapalooza of the Grateful Dead, scene, if you will, which was really, really cool to see. But it'd be weird if Jerry had passed away at a different era and a different time, for sure. Yeah. Brad, for you, who's your favorite Dead member?
So I think, I don't know if we've passed that yet, but I just wanted to make sure this gets on there because it's so underrated. My favorite song you asked earlier is Unbroken Chain.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, which is weird because Phil Lesh sings, and he didn't sing very many songs, but the songs that he did sing were pretty badass. And Unbroken Chain is like, it's kind of creepy. It's very beautiful. It's spacey. I don't know. It's that's my favorite.
All encompassing.
Yeah, and my favorite member, I mean, Jerry was probably the most accomplished. I mean, they're all like Phil Lesh is an amazing bass player, like just crazy good bass player. But as a drummer, I love Bill Kreutzmann. Him.
Okay, no, I can ask you: is it Bill or Mickey? Who's your favorite drummer?
Bill Kreutzmann for sure. Like early '70s, early to mid '70s, dude. Like he's top shelf drummer. Like doesn't get the credit he deserves. Like, and when Mickey left for a while, and he was forced to go back to being a solo drummer because they had, evolved into the point where they had the two drummers, extra percussion going on. And then Mickey was gone. And then he went back to doing that, and he like stepped his game up even more. He's like going Stuart Copeland on everybody with the fills, and like, they played so much too. I mean, you play every day, or God, every other day, or however many shows in a row. Like sometimes you plateau. I feel like he kept getting better and better and better. And then Mickey came back, and I think he kind of dumbed it down again, where he just sort of settled into his groove. But yeah, he's my favorite.
Yeah, and the crazy story about Mickey Hart is he left the Grateful Dead because the way I understand it anyway is because his dad was stealing from the fucking band.
It was his uncle or his dad or somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why he left. Yeah.
I thought it was his dad.
That's not a good way to go out.
No. We do have a photo of the wall of sound back there from Brother Matthew Rooney. This is quite the thing. Again, Kiss kind of followed in the footsteps of the wall of sound, if I'm not mistaken. Back then it was so different to make the sound louder. And this is the beginning. This is the pioneers of creating the sound. Actually, you got to give it to I forget his name. His first name is Bill, but the guy that did the sound system for Woodstock, 500,000 people. That guy probably inspired the wall of sound a little bit, I would think.
Yeah, you could do a whole episode on the wall of sound, man. I'm not the expert on that, but it's
insane. We really could.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I will say
the guy who created it he was the one they called the Bear, and the little marching bears are inspired by him, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Bear, I believe was what. Yes, I believe he was the sound guy.
He was also their LSD cook.
Owsley.
No, Owsley was the LSD cook. Owsley was, and this is a very crazy connection. Very, and this is an appropriate connection too, because Blue Cheer, another San Francisco band, they were named after the LSD that they got from Owsley, who was the LSD cook for the Grateful Dead. So again, a very, very special time with just Brother Matthew Rooney might not have anything to say about the Grateful Dead, but I remember when we were talking about the music scene from the 60s, because I know we've talked about Captain Beefheart and Frank Zappa, and of course Frank Zappa, San Francisco native as well. This is 20 fucking years after World War II. And it kind of put that in perspective. It's a really crazy, wacky time to just be completely experimenting from a sexual standpoint, from a drug standpoint and a musical standpoint. And of course, that is the origin of the Grateful Dead and a couple of their contemporaries that they really shared the stage with several times. If I had a time machine, I wouldn't go back to 1978 to get a Toys R Us on the shelf from Star Wars. I can buy that on eBay. I would go back to the Fillmore. That's what I would do. Speaking of that, Tim Rose, who played Admiral Akbar and Salacious Crumb, the puppeteer, and John Morton, who was Dak, when we interviewed them on Mocktails from the Cantina, they both had seen the Grateful Dead in the early 70s. Do you guys have a favorite year and a favorite concert? And I'm assuming your favorite concert is probably from that year. Obviously, the concert is probably not one that you attended, but the Grateful Dead had been very, very great about cataloging all of their shows. Obviously, the Grateful Dead channel on XM plays a lot of live stuff. You guys got a pick from that? Brother Brad, I'll start with you.
One of my favorite shows is, I think it's in December 71 in St. Louis, Fox Theater. And it's a really weird, I always go to the weird stuff, right? But it's like, Pigpen was still in the band, and then they also had Keith as the keyboard player. He had just joined. So it's like a weird like time period where I don't think Mickey was in the band either, but it's like your traditional Grateful Dead with Pigpen towards the end, and then you've got Keith playing keyboards. Really cool, interesting set list. They do Run Run Rudolph, which I thought was super cool. I always like that version. And it's early 70s, so it's like the time that I enjoy the most from them.
So it's got to be December 1970.
Yeah, I think it's 71.
If they're doing Run Run Rudolph, it's definitely a December show.
Yeah, it's not. They're not doing that in July, right?
No, no, not at all. Rich, what about you, man? What you got a favorite year, favorite show?
Yeah, I have a couple. One of my favorite year is 77. I mean, that was kind of the Terrapin year. My favorite right now, it's one of those where you got, depends on what I'm in the mood for. Right now, Halloween of 85 was a real good one. They had started with a really creepy little jam, ghoulish, monstery intro, and did really good ones, good cover of Werewolves in London, stuff like that. Yeah, really good. And you guys might be able to help me out with this other one. One of them that I can't think of the date right now, but they had a really killer saxophone dude for half the show. They did a really cool version of Birdsong with the guy playing sax for it. I forgot what year that one was, or what.
I know what you're talking about, but I am not one of those fans that can quote the dates. There's some people that'll be like, "What's your favorite album?" And they'll be like, "August 15th, 1974." It's no, that's not an album, dude.
I'm looking up in my list of chats because I knew I mentioned it to another one of my friends not too long ago.
I gotta chime in here. Brother Matthew Rooney does say that Frank Zappa was not a San Francisco native, which is correct. He grew up in his hometown in Southern California. But Frank Zappa was one of those guys that flocked to San Francisco because he knew something special was happening. Now, the Mothers of Invention, they might be also celebrating a 60th anniversary this year. If not this year, it would be 1966, which would be 60th year next year, along with a handful of other bands. The scene, obviously born in 1965.
And going back to that concert that I was thinking of, it's March 9th of 90.
March 9th of 90, okay.
Yeah, and it had and it had
who's the player?
Branford Marcellus.
Oh, Branford Marcellus. Yeah.
Oh, he's
okay.
a fucking jazz musician, man.
Yeah. That was such a killer show.
I am sure
he did a lot of stuff with them.
Having Branford in the back for that.
I could imagine that.
That was one where I was like, I heard it on Grateful Dead radio one day. I'm like, damn, what is this concert? I got to listen to the whole thing. And looked it up, and that's the great thing about Grateful Dead radio is you can see what concert those are.
Well, again, another great thing about the Grateful Dead is that they've done a really good job documenting everything. And I will say, from that era, they are the only band that had done a really, really superb job recording every show and documenting everything as well. Next photo we have back here, I just want to give a quick shout out and recommendation on this. You guys want to learn more about the birth of the Grateful Dead and the Bill Graham movement. San Francisco Sounds, A Place and Time was absolutely phenomenal, and the Grateful Dead were obviously a part of that. And it just showcases every band that was part of that scene. You know what? If you don't mind, I think we got another photo here. This is another great photo. This is one of my favorites. This photo, I want to say, is outside the Grateful Dead house. This photo here features the Big Four. Big Brother and the Holding Company, Jefferson Airplane, Grateful Dead, and help me out here because I've had a couple
Quicksilver.
Quicksilver Messenger Service. Thank you so much. I can't forget about them. Cannot forget about them. Obviously, they were, out of the Big Four, they were probably the one that got the, they probably burned the flame a little faster than everybody else did. Matthew, moving along, if you don't mind, we got a little bit of a slideshow here. I do have to say, this photo here, now the Grateful Dead had played several shows with the Jefferson Airplane. And this poster here is exactly how Rishi Mays got their logo. I reached out to Brother Barry Harmon, and I said, I want you to steal this and make it say Rishi Mays. And that is exactly how the Rishi Mays logo was born. I would say the Grateful Dead is not necessarily a huge influence on my playing, but again, the mindset and the long jams is something that I definitely respect and I get into. I feel like the band that Brother Brad and I play in Rishi Mays is almost, it's too heavy to be categorized in the Grateful Dead family. It's a little different than that, even though we try to, burn that flame and smoke what they're rolling, or vice versa, in the band.
It's more like Hawkwind. That's what you guys sound more like, is Hawkwind.
Yeah, and you know what's funny? Hawkwind, there was a documentary about Hawkwind, which is Lemmy's early band, Lemmy from Motorhead. They said San Francisco had the Grateful Dead and the Jefferson Airplane. London had Hawkwind. So obviously from the same era. Next photo is another favorite photo of mine. Bill Graham outside the Winterland. This is the closing of the Winterland, featuring the Grateful Dead, the Blues Brothers, and New Riders of the Purple Sage.
Man, what a show that would have been.
Oh my
man,
God, yeah.
What a fucking show. What a scene. And again, this shows you that everything comes to an end. The Fillmore closed, the Winterland closed. Bill Graham had unfortunately passed away by death in a helicopter crash in 91. I want to say it was 91. My favorite live show from the Grateful Dead, anything recorded at the Fillmore or Winterland. I just love hearing audio recordings from San Francisco. It's their home city, their hometown. These are legendary venues. I just, the Grateful Dead could probably have a very off night, but if it's from that venue, one of those venues, I'm like, you know what? This is a treat to listen to audio from a historical standpoint this way.
Another really great live concert was Golden Gate Park. I think it was the Bill Graham tribute concert.
Probably the Bill Graham Memorial concert. Yes,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's the one. Tyler Page suggested that to me, and that's the one when he went out to Haight-Ashbury, and he did a little detour to Golden Gate Park and just chilled out and listened to that whole concert right there. He was like, I stood right where a lady had a baby at a Dead concert.
Not recommended.
It's the equivalent of listening to the Binary Sunset from John Williams at the Homestead in Tunisia.
Yeah.
It's definitely the equivalent of that. All right, you know what? Did you guys get a chance to see the Grateful Dead? I will have to tell you, I did, and I don't know if it was Jerry's last show or the night before. Oddly enough, the Grateful Dead ended their touring career because Jerry had passed away.
Yeah.
They ended it in Chicago at Soldier Field. Wow. I was at one of those two shows. I got my ticket stub somewhere in the crawl space. Did you guys get a chance to see Jerry live?
No. I had friends that went to that show, and I kicked myself not. I've told you this before, Chris. I kicked myself not because I didn't get to go see them, because that show is pretty painful to listen to, and I think he was not well. Vocally, it was horrible. I think the stuff that you hear now, I would put money on it being doctored somehow to make it sound better, because there's unfiltered recordings where he sounds pretty rough, but I wouldn't have wanted to see that. It's like you don't want to see, somebody. You don't want to see Muhammad Ali in his last match when he's getting his clock cleaned. He's terrible. Not that Jerry was terrible, but it's like definitely it wasn't pretty.
It wasn't his pinnacle. It wasn't his pinnacle.
No. I wish I would have seen that because the band opened for the Dead.
Yes,
which is my favorite. Which is my favorite '60s band more than the Dead.
Yep.
But yeah, the Grateful Dead invited the reformed band. They had a new album out, which just celebrated its 30th anniversary, Jericho album by the band. But yeah, they took the band out on tour, and it was kind of cool because it's like, here's two legends of the 60s era playing shows in the mid 90s. Super cool. But I wish I would have seen it for that.
It seems to be a little cliche to have like such a cool super bill now, because I think you see that it's very, very common nowadays. I think Iron Maiden is going out on the road with Anthrax and Megadeth. It's like, oh my God, that's a cool fucking triple bill. But to see the band, that was the only time I had seen the band, and I had seen them open up for Grateful Dead. And the funny thing is,
what did you think of the show? Like overall, I mean, what do you remember?
You know what? I did not think it was horrible. But again, I was only listening to this music for a very, very short time. So I could not really come from a place to judge the performance and the playing, because I was listening to death metal and thrash metal for the last handful of years. So to hear Jerry live, it was not painful for me. I think as time went on, I realized it's kind of like the equivalent of being at Mark Burley's perfect game against the Rays. It's like, holy shit, I was there.
Yeah.
At the time, you don't really, understand how big it is. But as all these years go by, it's like, wow, that was definitely a historical show.
I was a little too. I mean, I wasn't really into them at that point. I was just starting to be, but I was a little too young to have seen him. I mean, I'm 48 now, so God, 90. When was his last show? 94, 95?
95.
Yeah, so. I was like 16, 17,
I think July 95. I think Matthew, the next photo we have is actually a lineup of Rich's favorite era here, the 1977 lineup, with Donna, who was the female singer in the band, and she just passed away, I want to say a month or two ago, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
There's not...
I think it was November 1st, I think.
Yeah, I want to say it was right around the time Ace Frehley had passed away. It was right, and then it was not too far away from that. Matthew, do we have any more photos back there? We do not. So we're gonna end on that. You know what? I gotta say, doing this show tonight, Rich, I want to thank you for recommending this show topic to us. I think it was super important, and I know you were worried that I was going to go on a San Francisco tangent.
We can do another show on that, yeah.
But I did want to be respectful on the topic itself, as we are celebrating the 60th of the dead, and the funny thing is, and the reality of it is that this truly is, again, God, you guys should have drank every time I had mentioned this, but the Grateful Dead is obviously still continuing to not pass the torch, but carry the torch with Dead and Company, and obviously they did the residency at the Sphere in Vegas. They are really keeping the spirit of the scene alive that started so many years ago, 60 years ago today. One of my favorite stories, before we close out, one of my favorite stories that really stuck with me in the Bill Graham autobiography was the early version of Fleetwood Mac, right, with Peter Green, one of my favorite Fleetwood Mac lineups. Mick Fleetwood was in the book, it says he was stoned out of his mind on LSD. And they shared the bill with Grateful Dead, and in between sets or at the end of the night, he just sat up there with the mic and he said, "The Grateful fucking Dead." And he said that 20 times into the microphone. So he must have knew that they were obviously the powerhouse of the bill that evening as they were playing in their hometown in San Francisco at the Fillmore. What would have been the Fillmore West at that time. But anyways, I want to thank you guys for joining the show tonight. Brother Brad Riverdahl, Brother Rich Brendel, and we look forward to having you guys back on the show at some point real soon.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, man. It was fun.
I appreciate it, man. An hour burns up fast. I want to thank Brother Matthew Rooney for all his hard work. And we will be back. We will be back full throttle in December with a lot of Christmas content. So, hey, the music never stops. And thank you guys for your support. Thank you guys for tuning in. And we appreciate you dancing in the streets with us tonight. Raise my glass, cheering a beer, as Brother Rich Brendel always does, but I'll do it tonight. Grateful Dead celebrating the 60th anniversary through the year of 2025 as we come to a close. We got it in the books. We'll catch you guys next time on another episode of Machtails from the Cantina Live. So long, everybody.